Let's go ahead and get started. People will continue to trickle in here. Welcome, everybody. My name is Matthew Savis. I'm a team leader here at the Lean Enterprise Institute, and today we are joined by GE Appliances, a hire company, and Herman Miller. Today, it looks like we have about 50 of us in the webinar now, and that number will continue to climb as we move over the course of the next hour. Before we get started, I'd like to share a bit of information about the Lean Enterprise Institute and the agenda that we have planned today. So for those of you who do not know, here we go. The Lean Enterprise Institute is a nonprofit education and research institute based in Boston. We were founded in 1997 by Dr. James Womack. LEI fulfills a mission to spread lean thinking and practice a number of ways. First, we publish books, we host summits to build community, conduct online and in-person workshops, and coach companies, as well as publish a host of free content on our website, lean.org. Here is our agenda for today. It is fairly simple. We'll have a brief introduction to the content and our panelists, and then I'll turn it over to our friends from GE Appliances and Herman Miller to share the content that they have about opening safely amidst COVID-19. And then we'll round it out with Q&A for about 15 minutes or so. Concerning Q&A, you should see a button called Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And you can click that and it will open up a window. Please ask questions at any point over the course of the webinar. You can even vote on questions that have been asked by clicking the thumb. That will give us a sense of which questions the audience would like answered, and we'll spend the last 15 minutes answering them. Our webinar today is entitled The Post-COVID-19 Reboot, Safe, Smart Steps for Restarting Production. Our panelists will share how they responded quickly and with great agility to the frontline challenges presented by social distancing and keeping people safe. We are grateful to be joined by members of GE Appliances, a hire company, and Herman Miller. We have Rich Calvaruso, Senior Director of Lean at GE Appliances, Chris Shier, Senior Herman Miller Performance Systems Manager Lead, Steve Michalak, Herman Miller Performance System Manager, and Scott Bacon, Herman Miller Performance System Manager. I'll ask these gentlemen to introduce themselves. Rich, could you kick off?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody, at least if you're in this time zone. My name is Rich Calvaruso. I have 31 years of manufacturing experience, and I am leading the lean transformation at GE Appliance, a hire company. Today I'll share a little bit about what we've done to be able to resume operations quickly and keep our employees safe and healthy.
Okay, thanks, Rich. Chris.
Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Shier, Senior Performance Engineer Manager at Herman Miller. Been with Herman Miller now going on about 30 years in many different aspects of the business, and have been helping our global manufacturing plants do their improvement work over the last several years. And the team and I will share today our approach to bringing manufacturing back into our manufacturing sites and some of the learnings that we've had along the way, and hopefully it can help you with your journey as well.
Thank you, Chris. And Steve.
Yeah, hi, everyone. Steve Michalak, HMPS Manager for our North Campus in Spring Lake, Michigan. So look forward to talking to you about what we learned through this, moving quickly around something, again, that was very unknown, and being able to respond quickly. So look forward to the conversation.
Thank you, Steve. And lastly, Scott.
Good afternoon, Scott Bacon. I am Steve's counterpart South Campus at Herman Miller's, part of the Herman Miller Performance System. Worked 18 years in automotive and the last 5 years in furniture working for Herman Miller.
All right. Thank you, Rich, Chris, Steve, and Scott for joining us over this hour. We really appreciate it. I know you're all very busy, so thank you. I guess we can go ahead and get started here. I'll begin by addressing Rich from GE Appliances. Rich, Appliance Park is an enormous complex with several thousand employees spread across 6 facilities. And a big challenge, of course, that you faced was ensuring employees were safe just to enter the workplace. You did this through iterating and scaling temperature testing. Could you walk us through your approach to solving this problem?
Yeah, glad to. Let me share a couple of things here, see if I can make this work. Pull up this little PowerPoint. Hopefully you can see it here in a second. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Looks great.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay, so I'll kind of walk you through what we did around temperature testing. We did quite a few things to be able to ensure the employees were able to come back to work in a safe manner. And I'm going to kind of talk about the temperature testing portion. So kind of give you a timeline as we go. On March 15th, I actually got a call from my from the vice president of our supply chain, and he said, "Hey, I need your help. We need to have a way to check temperature of all employees when they come back to work, or by March 30th." And at this point, we were working that week of March 15th, and this was right when things were starting to get kind of, the COVID stuff was really getting out, and people were getting nervous. So we actually shut our plants down for 1 week, March 23rd through the 29th. And we did lots of things, including some of the things, some very similar things that Herman Miller talked about in a minute. But one of the things I worked on personally was setting up ability to temperature test. And we originally had a target of April 6th, but you know how that goes. They changed it to being March 30th, so didn't have a whole lot of time to figure this out. Matt mentioned that Appliance Park's a pretty big place. And we have basically 5 production buildings on site. We also have a administration building, and we have I don't show on the map here, but there's quite a few trucks that come in. We have a distribution center in the back, so we have lots of ways to get into this large 1,000-acre facility. And so the first thing I asked was, "What's TAKT time?" And everybody kind of looked at me and said, "What are you talking about? What do you mean the TAKT time?" I said, "Well, if we got to know, we need to know how many people we need to test, and at what TAKT time do we have to test?" So we gathered some data, and it turns out that on any given day in a 24-hour period, we had about 7,600 entries back in and out of the facility through our turnstiles. And there were about 16 different ways to get in, 28 individual turnstiles. And there was actually an ability to drive your vehicle in for some people. So we were like, holy crap, how are we going to do this? Plus, we had 4 satellite sites, and we had to have temperature testing up and running on March 30th in every single site. So this wasn't your traditional sort of problem where you can just say, you don't really have even entry of people. So like this little graph here just kind of shows you what you would expect in a manufacturing operation, right? People come in for a shift, and then they go to lunch, and then they go out, they come back, they come back in for the next shift, and so forth. So you kind of have to design your system around these kind of peaks, right? Because it's kind of a theory of constraint problem if you think about it. You have to, if you don't do this, then you're going to back the people up. So we kind of determined that we needed to be able to test at a rate of 4 seconds, which everybody thought was impossible. So we again, March 15th when I got a call. March 20th we had our first prototype. I'll show you a little video. and it's very, very, well, actually, it's not very good, I'd say, but at the time we thought it was pretty cool. But we didn't like it because it involved, it wasn't touch-free. And people had to walk up and they had to put their forehead on a forehead type thermometer. We did modify the thermometer to put the tester person away from it, but it was a problem, right? We just didn't like this solution. We also, at this point in time, Matt, they were saying, we got to do this outside of the buildings, and you need to get some tents. And we were really, I kept struggling with, like, how the heck are we going to facilitate this? This was in March, and in Louisville, Kentucky, in March, it was in the mornings. It would be, we had mornings in the 30 degree Fahrenheit range. So we were like, man, this is going to be a problem. So we kind of had a team that really was working on find a solution, a measuring solution, and then my team sort of worked on how to make it flow. Again, when you have to be able to test somebody at a 4-second pace, you have to have something that's pretty quick. So we kind of tested many systems. We ended up with a thermal camera solution that is pretty quick. And just show you a quick little video. This is March 24th. This is in our training center, and I basically asked people to come in on that day to help run a pilot so we can kind of actually create some standardized work. And you'll see Mike here. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Let me turn this volume down. This is going to be really annoying. So anyway, well, I'm just going to play the video without the volume, but you'll see our team members have a little bit of fun. But you can see kind of the process, right? It's fairly quick, right? It's fairly quick. We measured about 6 seconds cycle time for the folks that were going through, which is close to the TAKT time. So we were getting close to have a solution we could implement. We had 6 days from here to do it. And it turned out that this solution worked. There's all these people selling these thermal cameras, but what we found is in order to get really good repeatability and reproducibility out of this gauge, this distance from the camera to the person was really critical. As long as so again, we did a lot of, just basic 5S and visualization stuff to make it flow. We marked the floor and that type of thing. So this is kind of where we were on March 24th, okay? And then if we kind of walk forward a little bit. So then we had to implement all this, right? So now, a little prototype looked pretty promising. Appliance Park, you have 5 production buildings. We had to put 2 stations in our laundry building. We have a building that has stamping and paint. We put 1 station there. Our dishwasher plant, we put 2 stations. Our plastic injection molding operation, we put a station. And in our refrigeration operation, we had to put 2 stations. We had to figure out how to staff these stations. We had to figure out how to tell people, like, this is completely changing the work. So everybody's at home this week. They're coming back on March 30th, and we're going to funnel them through different entrances, right? This new process that they're not sure what it is. But we were able to implement that. This one, just very quick video, shows you basically what happens when you walk in the factory. This was the very first version. It was we had the thermal camera, but it was on the tripod. And, we just made some screens up. It was, we had to implement this very, very quickly. And, I guess a little bit lucky. I think some of it was, we had a pretty good process, we felt like it was going to work. And we started us up on March 30th and really had like no issues. We didn't really back the lines up. Everybody was afraid that, oh, you guys are going to back the people up, to the parking lot, and it's going to be chaos. And it wasn't. So we had some folks, once the people went through the first or second day, they kind of knew the routine, and it worked pretty well. We also had actually, at this point in time, we were starting to pass out masks. So we had to figure out how to integrate mask process into this, and we kind of came up with some nice solutions there. If you kind of walk forward to maybe, I don't know, a month later, we saw some opportunity to improve the situation, because the system that we had, where they were on tripods, and we were doing this in the buildings, right? So, so one, we didn't have to buy these tents, we didn't have to put all the stuff outside, but we were leaving. We had to basically every weekend we'd have to take the whole system down, because the cameras are kind of expensive. We didn't want to just let them sit there and put them back together. So and the, you know, if somebody bumped the tripod, it would affect it. So we said we need a little better solution. So we developed this tester station, I call it maybe version 2. We put a redundant system in there, so we have 2 cameras and two laptops running it, and we replaced all the stations with this setup in about a week. And this, what's nice about this is, lets us on the weekend we can close this door and lock it, and not have to. You know, we were having people having to come in Friday at 11:30 p.m. and take all this stuff down and carry it up and lock it up, and then Sunday night they'd have to come back in and set it all back again. So we were like, man, this isn't so good. And then as you kind of look at progression, I'll show you a little video over here. This is a video where I'm walking through the station, and we added a green light to kind of, this was kind of a new version that would kind of give you a visual indicator that you were good or bad. Because my ultimate idea is to get to a situation where we don't have to staff this. Because right now for us, just here at Appliance Park, we have to have, I think the number's about 1,100 hours of people to man these stations. You got to remember, we have a big complex. We have full production, you know, running, and we have 3 shifts. In fact, right now, I mean, we're basically running 6 days a week, and so, you know, we have to have access to temperature testing kind of around the clock. So it takes some people to do that. We've been using some of our salary team members that have, they're, you know, to kind of sign up. We kind of say, please volunteer to run a 4-hour shift for us. But, you know, that's a lot to ask for people ongoing. We don't know how long we're going to do this stuff, right? It's probably, we don't see a end date anytime soon. So we've been working on a new version, and a new version, this is just me again walking down the hallway. But this version has is automated. There's no person working this station. We put some little simple instructions. You scan your badge now to get. So the first thing you do is scan your badge, and then you stand on the little orange feet. But our digital technology team helped us come up with a little program that integrates with the camera software, and it basically tells you if you can go in or out of if you can enter, or if you have to exit the facility. We implemented this, I guess, on June 8th is when they did this. And this is our administration building. So we started to bring our salary team members back to work. We kind of a program called Work from Office. And those folks are starting to come into the facility again. And so I said, well, this building's, you know, maybe an opportunity to test this system. So we set this up June 8th, and it's been running unstaffed or you know, with no person. And people are getting their temperature tested at the station successfully since June 8th. So next step is to move this solution to the plants. And then ultimately we're working on a version 4, which will be tied into our turnstile entry. So basically the temperature testing unit will, if you pass, it will actually open the turnstile. So we're going to have we're actually building we took a shipping container, and we're going to put a temperature tester inside the shipping container. We're going to have it air conditioned and all that. And you'll walk in and get tested. And if you pass, it'll let you in the facility. And if you don't, it will direct you out. So I guess, in these times, I never thought as a lean leader for GE Appliances, I'd be developing a temperature testing system and trying to make it more efficient. But, that's kind of where we live in today. So that's what we did. Right now, of all the things we've done, this one's been real successful. It's pretty. I tell you, I was telling the Herman Miller folks before we started the meeting, we tested lots of systems. They're not all the same. So if you're out there thinking about this solution, you need to evaluate the hardware and make sure it's a good gauge. There's a lot of people trying to sell you these things right now, and some of them, quite frankly, are just not very good. We're pretty happy with what we bought, and it seems to be working for us. And it catches high temps. Probably one thing I'd say, Matt, is we started this in March. It wasn't very sunny in March, and it wasn't very hot. And we're finding that hot's not such a problem for this temperature testing, but sun is. So what we're finding is you need to kind of acclimate inside for about 100 feet inside the building is what we're finding. So you got to come in the building. Here, for example, if it's 5:30 in the morning, it's not a problem. First shift, people come in, not a problem. But if you go out to lunch and it's noon and it's really sunny, maybe in Grand Rapids it doesn't get so sunny, but maybe or Boston. But in Louisville it gets sunny, and if you get real sunny day and you've got a kind of hairline like I have, you'll get that sun will stay and heat you up, and it'll fail you. So we've learned that. So we've changed locations of these things several times and created, and we have a couple countermeasures. We find about 30 seconds. If we have a failure, we wait 30 seconds, test again, and generally that solves that problem. That's kind of our story. I could probably talk about this all day, but I'm trying to be mindful of time. I think I got like about a minute left on my allotted time.
Yeah, that was nicely done,
Matt,
Rich.
I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
You guys hear
Sorry
me?
about that.
Yep.
Oh, you know what? I got my volume turned down. I can't hear you guys because I turned my volume down.
There we go. So thanks for sharing that, Rich. By the way, it does get sunny here in Boston, although not such a problem for me yet anyway. Yeah, confronting a huge challenge of 6,500 employees, I think you said, needing to enter the building every 4 seconds, need to take a temp and take a good temp. And so figuring out all of the minor things like sun that could get in the way of correct temperature check. But very, very interesting to see the sort of rapid iterative cycles that you went through to figure out a scalable solution that works.
Again, you got to think about this, Matt. Like, if you don't let the folks in the plant in time, the operation guys are gonna come find you, right? So we had to come up with a solution that facilitated entry. It literally almost, I think it takes longer to clock in than it does to get temperature tested now.
That's pretty impressive. Again, being like you, being mindful of time, I do want to make sure that the folks from Herman Miller have time to tell their story. For those with questions for Rich, use the Q&A function so that we can capture those and you don't forget them along the way here. Now turning from outside the factory to inside the factory, we have 3 gentlemen here from Herman Miller. And Herman Miller, for those who are not aware, has a tremendously strong culture of collaborative problem solving that is built on, at the line level, strong team leaders capable of responding rapidly to calls for help. And so interesting here, what sort of challenges did COVID-19 present, and how did you guys at Herman Miller leverage your problem-solving capability to manage the crisis?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. We'll start with the overall approach that we took for really focusing on the social distancing, the physical distancing aspect of it within manufacturing. Again, as Rich said, we want to make sure that everybody's safe as they come back to work. And when we started this work, we had a small crew of volunteers doing essential orders for government and for healthcare. So we had a little bit of manufacturing going on, but nowhere near the full production that we had to get to. We needed to have a look at all the different scenarios within our business where we knew people would be closer together than 6 feet. Things like line spacing or responding to a team member that needed help on the line or training. We knew these areas would cause this problem to occur. And we took a team approach, partnering with engineering, manufacturing, the HMPS team, our lean group, and safety, all going to see what the specific causes were for each of those different scenarios. And we had multiple teams in each of our factories, and each team was given the assignment to take one of these scenarios and dive deep into it, using problem solving and PDCA to get to a model condition that we thought would mitigate the risk. And then having the documentation from that, be able to share that with the other teams to implement across the different factories. So each team actually had two responsibilities. One was to create a model on a particular scenario, and then also to receive all of the standards that have been created by the other teams and spread them within the manufacturing environment that they were responsible for. Lastly, we had to create a way of auditing ourselves to make sure that we were able to sustain the improvements and keep people safe for the long term. Outside of manufacturing, we took the same approach around our common spaces where there might be congregations around time clocks, or where we have shop floor meetings for huddles every day. It also led us to consider how air was being circulated within the factories that might contribute to the problem outside of the physical distancing. At this point, I'll turn it over to Steve and to Scott to go through a few examples for everybody.
All right, thanks, Chris. So like Chris had mentioned, how do we get to standardizing our mitigation steps and spread that across the business? So HMPS team was really focused in on how do we take a look at assembly lines. We've got a lot of people on the line working in a very close quarters. How do we keep them safe? So, we have a lot of great people with great ideas from the team members on the shop floor to the engineers. Really, how do we support and get that idea generation from a cross-functional team? And that was critical in just getting out with rapid experiments. So you see an example here. How do we create barriers to create safety? So a little bit of a moving target when all of this started. A lot of unknowns, still a lot of unknowns, but we knew a few things, or at least a few things were very prevalent. Keep 6 feet apart. Airborne, coughing, sneezing, spread by touching. How do we mitigate something that we know we potentially can't eliminate or we don't know a whole lot about? And that was our approach. So you see here, barriers being one of those things where we couldn't achieve 6 feet. Does a barrier provide a level of protection? And we started with stretch wrap. I think an idea maybe someone had seen in a post office. We said, hey, can that go to the shop floor? At least, initially, happened very quickly, provide that level of safety to start. The next level, some curtains, and then finalizing into a more permanent solution in plexiglass as we got the resources around how can we create a barrier that will withstand, can be cleanable, and provide that same protection. The other is, after all these ideas came about, and we standardized that approach. And if you look here, these are really the 7 key things that the teams had focused on. So how can we reduce that time between rotation? Not only that it does have some benefits in performance and quality, but in this regard, can we reduce cleaning? Can we reduce the contact station to station, common tools, common areas? How do we provide a safer, clean environment and limit that contact? The next is how can we clean after each of those rotations? So if we are spreading the virus by touching common tools in the area, being present in the station, how can we clean at the rotations? Scott's going to get into our response to Andon in detail, so I won't cover that much. FMDS, our group huddle. So communication, we want to get together, communicate with our teams. We did that in large groups of people in a tight space. So how do we still have that level of communication, but provide visualization to make sure that the team members are staying 6 feet apart? That was a focus of ours, and I'll show some of the visual management tools we use, some of the floor stickers that were used in that. Fan protocols, so making sure that, knowing this is airborne, what can we do around fans to mitigate those concerns of spreading particles throughout the air in an airborne setting. Same thing with compressed air. If we're cleaning with compressed air or there's compressed air blow-offs, making sure we're not being or creating a larger risk with those. And then probably the biggest one, it's last year on the list, but really where we started is how do we create a condition where we're 6 feet apart? And I'll talk a little bit about line balance. So first, can we create the 6 foot spacing through our balance? If not, can we create barriers, put barriers in place? Are things we looked at, again, when you can't be 6 feet, even spreading work across shifts, which we really wanted to stay away from. And as we learn more, things like face shields, those were known to protect team members from contact in close quarters. So we definitely evolved as we went through this. And then here, an assessment. So this is something we built, and I got a lot of great support from some of our team members outside of the ops HMPS team that came from our last mile team, and a number of others that came and helped and supported the work being done here. So thank you to them. And if you're on listening, thank you very much. You guys know who you are and gals. So appreciate that work and effort to standardize these mitigation steps, highlight them in each area of our facility, and make sure that at a minimum, we're providing our teams with the tools and the proper settings to work safely, and be consistent across the plant. All right, so like I said, a couple key learnings around line balance, in a work balance chart and standardized work being key to being able to critically understand and quickly move potentially elements within the line so that we could balance to create 6 foot spacing, team member to team member. Where we didn't have the documents and where they weren't updated, it was much more difficult to understand if we could do that quickly. And so where we were doing well with our standardized work and work balance, it was easier to see, potentially within the line, how we could balance that work to create a safe environment. The other picture here to the right is in regards to, this is an example from our PED line of marking the pitches, and something we've learned very important to understanding where work is being done within standardized work condition. But in this case, and Rich, you mentioned that never thought I'd be doing some of these things as a HMPS manager, but creating barriers on a line, not something that we'd promote within a lean environment, in creating difficulty in a sense of moving throughout the line. But in this case, it helped identify start and end of pitches and allowed us to know where we could put those barriers and at least limit the challenges that it would bring to the team members, keeping them within the start and stop points of their pitch. All right, and then a little bit around visualization. So putting these things in place and then visualizing, 6 feet. What does 6 feet look like? So it was very surprising after you started marking the floor and realize how far apart 6 feet really is. You know, you say, hey, stay 6 feet apart. I found myself even, you know, out there with team members and having conversation when there wasn't markings. You know, you're trying to eyeball it and say, hey, I'm 6 feet. We got the markings out on the floor, and it's like, wow, you know, that last week without these markings, I was within that 6 feet. I was in violation, you know. So visualizing, you know, using that 5S standard to help understand where you're at risk, where you're not, and promote, and also give us something to coach to and visualize that environment. These tabs in the circles here in the middle, that's where I talked the huddles and the huddle markings, marking out the floors so that everyone was 6 feet apart. They had a place to stand when they came to their huddles for communication. So a few examples of how we mark the line. All right, I'll turn over to Scott for Andon Response.
All right, so I'm going to talk about Andon Response. So if you work at Herman Miller and work in manufacturing, you have someone dedicated to you to respond to you when you have problems. We call those facilitators. So what it means is that it's second nature when you work at Herman Miller. If you've got a problem, you ask for help and you promptly get it. And when you're on our shop floor, a lot of these Andons have music tied to them. This happens every few minutes. It's what we do. So we're in a situation where, being in our new world of manufacturing, that we had to adapt to how we respond when someone hits their Andon. Because our traditional response to Andon was, I walk in, I'm side by side, shoulder to shoulder, I'm going to give you the support you need to solve your problem. So through some brainstorming and experimentation, we came up with 3 different options that we had that were acceptable, that respected physical distancing, but also allowed you to respond to that problem when the team member needed help. So we have 3. Quick response, collaboration, and replacement. And again, we went with some visual markings to show that we needed to maintain our 6-foot distance, and then also just some coordination of where the people stand so we could give that support. So when you look at the far left on the quick response, the first one's simple, informational. So I'm having a problem, I hit my Andon because I need help, and I stay in my station. Now the facilitator is going to come up to that line, which is 6 feet away, and it's a simple conversation. I can turn around my station, ask a question, get the feedback that I need. The second one is collaboration. And this is one that looks and feels like our traditional response. But what you'll see is that we had to increase our PPE requirements in order to do this. So as a company, we've made a choice to say we wear masks full time. This is the first time I've been in the office not wearing a mask for more than about 2 minutes in a long time. But I figured you'd rather see that than this. So people are wearing masks full time. In a collaboration scenario, it's I need help and I need you next to me in order to help me work through this problem. So in that case, we've got the protocol where the facilitator or the responder to the problem actually wears a face mask. So you've got each person wearing a mask, then you actually have a facilitator wearing a shield down in front just for that extra layer of protection. The last one you'll see is what we call replacement. So this is one where I know going into asking for help that I'm going to need someone in there for more of an extended amount of time doing work that I cannot. Maybe it's solving a particular problem. You've had something that's gone out of alignment or had some component issue. If I know that person's going to have to step in and do work for me, what I do is I hit my Andon. You take a step out to that response box, and that's a good visual cue for the responder to know that they need to walk up and actually replace you online. So no extra PPE, but I'm out of my station, I'm in the response box, and then the facilitators in there solving that problem. So those are 3 acceptable responses to Andon. We found, just for ease and just culturally what we're used to, most of our facilitators have just gone to wearing masks and shield full times. That's the one that feels the most natural. Okay, now go back in time a bit, that late March, early April time frame like Rich was referencing. We were all a lot less educated on what it meant to work within a COVID-19 environment. And we had to come up with a way where we could provide training for our people, as well as welcoming them back to the new reality. So we had a challenge put out to us that how in a 2-week time frame would we be able to train people at our same acceptable level in our new environment? And the tool we decided to deploy to use that is as a 7 ways workshop, which is just a structured workshop that combines brainstorming and mock-ups to provide a creative solution. So our design challenge was, how do you give that proper level of training while respecting physical distancing, and then accomplish that within 2 weeks? So we got a group of 5 folks together, and we went through and said, okay, we are going to each personally generate 7 ideas within a 45-minute time frame. We're going to get those together, group them, evaluate them, go out and do some experimentation, and say what is realistic for us to deploy over our West Michigan campus of 5 buildings within the next 2 weeks. From that, we came up with 4 solutions. One is, we said we need to have a good DIY video as people are coming back in to ensure that we have a standard message and also get some look and feel of what they're going to see when they go out to the shop floor. So we had one of our team members work with another person from our video department, and we quickly put together an introduction video, a couple of minutes just to show them what to expect when they got back. Second thing we said was that the trainer bears a lot of responsibility to show weight and importance that we're putting on how we're going to respect our new training protocol. So we drafted up what we called the commandments and got those to our trainers and said, look, when people are coming back to work and are receiving training, they're only going to take this as seriously as you present it. So we went through, got input, and got sign off on the fact that these are the commandments that we're going to go to. The last 2 had to do with just how we can train respecting the physical distancing. Now, this happened prior to, we figured out that at the time we weren't wearing masks yet. We weren't even open and running yet. There's a handful of people in a closed plant. We didn't yet have an opinion on this idea of using shields. So the idea we came up with is we called it the pandemic trainer. The idea that if you are the trainer, you're going to have both mask, glasses, and shield while you're doing your training. Or if you go over to the right-hand side, we constructed a lightweight, movable barrier. So the combination of that barrier and the mask, that we'd be able to conduct our training. Now, we're able to train. There are certain challenges. It's always harder to talk through with a mask on. Temperature in the plant has a large impact on it, but from finding 4 ideas that could welcome people back to work and keep them safe and have some sense of normal, we're able to accomplish that using the 7 ways workshop. Now, continuing that, and Steve, if you could go to the next slide, we also identified some things that we said, we think this could be very helpful, but it didn't fit within our 2-week scope. So what we did is we did a 7 ways part 2, the tech edition. And we said, even though our scope was to be within 2 weeks, we always preach, have the mindset of a 12-year-old. And that means oftentimes timelines and cost go out the window. So we had some cool, expensive ideas that had come up as well. So we went back through that and looked at, okay, of all these other ideas, what is the level of both tech integration and implementation timing that we would deem acceptable for more of a midterm solution? So now that we were able to train people short term, what else could we adopt? From that, we had 2 ideas come up. One, the nickname for it was the Britney Spears, you know, the microphone, headphone setup. So even though we can train in proximity using the PPE, it's still very hard to communicate in here. So currently we are trialing voice activated communication devices that are kind of that mid-tier. They are the grade that can be used in manufacturing, but not so extravagant that they require FCC licensing and things like that. And actually, we had to go through quite a bit of trials to find things that delivered the sound quality we needed, also with the voice activation. We could find lots of push buttons, but we've been going through trials to get something that works. The second one that's been fun and kind of exciting is these ideas. How do you both communicate and get to the point where you can visualize from a distance? So we've been doing some experimentation with GoPro cameras mounted on the bills of baseball hats and having that linked to a phone on the trainer so you could see and communicate back and forth, as well as one of our team members found out about a software called Vuforia Chalk. And it's something where you can picture if you've each got a window into what the other person's seeing with your phones, with the ability to annotate, more of a whiteboard setup, or I think about when you watch American football, like the Chalk Talk, how do you break down plays? This is a software that's available. It's not anything we've implemented yet, but it's something we've experimented with. And it does give that next layer towards being able to create more of a normal interaction, but still being able to keep that distance. Now, one idea that we had learned about, we said this is too long-term, it would need too much funding and infrastructures. We had talked about the idea of how could we use virtual reality, how could we use libraries that you could access on like a, I even forget what the name brand is, but you know, the goggles you wear where you can reference video. It's cool stuff, but we said a little too forward thinking for what we need it for, and we're not quite ready for it yet. But what was neat to see is this idea of getting a handful of people together for a couple 2-hour sessions, all of the things that came out of this.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott.
Absolutely.
All right, so just to wrap it up, you know, talking sustainability. So how do we put standardization in place and then make sure that we can, you know, standard actual gap? How can we see how we're doing? So at the time here, you know, we were still building upon getting these assessment scores to 100%. So if we go back a couple slides to the 7 criteria and assessing all of our areas, our goal and our target's to be at 100% to put ourselves in a condition that is a safe environment. Now, the next part we're working on here is audits are in place. There's social distancing teams that are helping go in and have observation within the plant floor, within our common spaces, our assembly lines, our manufacturing spaces across. Just how are we doing with the things that we have put in place with masks, social distancing, cleaning, so on and so forth, and giving feedback so that we can highlight that to our leadership, understand where those gaps are, and then make sure we continue to develop countermeasures and coaching around those gaps. And that is
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Chris, for sharing the learning that you guys are doing at Herman Miller. So I think I heard some common themes that Rich shared, notably rapid iteration and visualization. So trying to figure out problems as quickly as possible with as little money and materials possible, starting even with an idea I think you said came from the post office, starting with some plastic wrap as a barrier, then evolving to plexiglass. So we do have some time remaining for Q&A, and there are some questions that are ready to go. The first one here is from Andreas. They ask, how did you approach briefing and training all employees on the new policies around COVID-19 countermeasures to increase awareness and effectively roll out required rules in practice? Maybe Herman Miller, any thoughts on that?
Sure. Scott had mentioned about the initial training video to make people aware of the changes that were happening as they were at home and coming back in. That was one methodology. We also put together an overall playbook. I think Rich showed the picture at the beginning about the rules and how the environment at work has changed. And all of our team members are required to look at this online video to prepare them both mentally and for the changes that are happening within the environment as well. So there's both of those. And then once they arrive, our onboarding team take them through the physical changes that have happened within each of their areas.
Rich, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I mean, very similar. I mean, we did lots of communication in multiple methods, including the flyer. As mentioned, we have a little program called Ready App. It's a little, you can put messages out and team members could subscribe to it, so we communicate that way. We did videos, we did lots of things because there was lots of change happening quickly. So yeah, we did as much as we, you can't over communicate in this type of situation.
Next question from John. I'm curious if you all had any issues with mask compliance? If so, did you navigate compliance without disciplinary actions? I think it was you, Scott, who mentioned that it's mandatory mask all the time at Herman Miller. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Sure. Yes, it is mandatory full-time. And the fact that there is sponsorship from our CEO on down, it has not been an issue. There's that good positive peer pressure that this is something that if we do can allow us to be open and doing good work.
Yeah, I think I would say we have some, it's always an area that we look at and we address. There's always the disciplinary approach is one item. We kind of believe, you could do some positive reinforcement, thank people for their mask, educate people on what happens and why the mask is important. It's a constant thing. You have to kind of keep on it.
It's a behavior change that we have to use the positive reinforcement, like you said.
The biggest coaching has been around proper wearing of the mask, over the nose, fully covered. That's one of those big things that sometimes they tend to slip down and getting used to talking from behind a mask, right? So constantly reinforcing those behaviors and coaching and encouraging, and it'll become something natural, like wearing safety glasses. It's an expectation day in and day out to come in just like you would your safety glasses. And I can say it's starting to feel that way after, 3 going on months of having to do so.
It's something that was brought up in our coaches' notes, as well as when our work team leaders were addressing their teams. There's not one style of mask that is good for everyone. So the encouragement is, if one doesn't fit you, try a different style. You will find one that will fit you, and you get to the point where you can wear it comfortably.
Yeah, it is amazing the number of new things that are becoming natural these days. All kinds of behavior changes we're all getting used to. Rich, there is a specific question from Michael here. Can you share what temperature measurement systems you evaluated and which one you ended up using?
Well, I could definitely tell which one we were using. We ended up using the system by a company called Fotric. I can't give you a list. I just don't know off the top of my head what all the systems they tried. I know they tested many systems, and the Fotric system, and for us, one early on was available. We were able to get it, and it had good result. So that's kind of what we ended up using. It's basically a thermal imaging system that has it's basically 2 cameras. There's one camera that it kind of looks like a camera, like a 35 millimeter camera, but it also has a little webcam, so it looks at your face thermally, and it also takes a picture of your face. What we're finding is, the thermal image is really what we use. We don't use all the features of it. We don't really collect data. We don't save anything. But we were looking for something that could be quick and was accurate. That was that's what we needed. And we've had good luck. It's been pretty stable.
Hmm.
On March, we had no idea. You know what I mean? We have lots of data now.
And Herman Miller, are you using a similar system for temperature testing, or is it dramatically different from what GE is doing?
Currently,
Sure.
Currently, we have across all of our operations, we have thermal scanner, temp gun, and we have an attendant at the doors. We have one setup where we're currently starting to investigate using thermal imaging. We would like to get to the point where we have the eventual unmanned, people are checked, flown, they come through the door, but right now we have temperature check booths.
An interesting question here from Tammy. With all the change that's happening, what are you doing with your teams who might be dealing with the change fatigue and morale with having to deal with all of these changes? Rich, have you experienced that with some of the team, and if so?
Yeah, I think you went through different phases of emotion with this situation we're in, right? There was a lot of fear at the beginning, so a lot of emotion. And I think we reiterated over and over and over, what one, why do we need to run, right? What's the reason? For us, we make appliances. So at first we had to people were like, what do you mean you're essential? And I told Matt the other day, I said, if anybody doesn't think their appliances are essential, then please take all of your appliances out of your house and put them on your curb. And then in a week, let me know if you think they're essential or not. And so what ended up happening was people are using their appliances more than ever because they're staying home. So we had to let people understand that message, our employees. But we also had to make sure they understood what we were doing to keep them safe. And so just lots of dialogue, being on the floor, talking to people, and reassure them. But that's normal. You're going to have that problem.
Well, also, correct me if I'm wrong, Rich, but you and other members of management were working the assembly line for some time as well.
Yes,
Right?
yes, we did. We worked several weeks out there online with our team members, and I think that helped a lot because they said, we were out there with them. It's hard to tell who's who when you got a face mask on, but we were out there, and I think our CEOs out there, we had senior leaders out there running the production line. So I think you'll just go through some of that normal emotion and just be positive and communicate and listen.
CEO out on the assembly line. I think it was you, Scott, who said also Herman Miller getting a lot of positive reinforcements from the CEO there at Herman Miller. So no doubt that is important. Would you guys like to add anything to that question?
I think just to reiterate what Rich was talking about, the communication plan and getting communication out to team members who are at home, worried about their family and what things they have to worry about at home, thinking about coming into work, making sure that we can make them as comfortable as possible and make them aware of the changes that have been implemented to keep them safe. And then just being sensitive to the whole person, not just getting them back to work.
I like being sensitive to the whole person. It's not just about the job that needs to be done, but everything around that. We do have a couple of more minutes and one question left here from Jose. What were the solutions adopted to guarantee 6 feet apart in restrooms and cafeteria areas? So not the factory floor, but the other parts of the facility. How about we start off here with Rich on that?
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, there's things you never ever thought of. First thing is you have to shut down all your water fountains. You can't use water fountain. You have to close all those. In the bathrooms, in the men's room especially, we basically closed off every other urinal. We're in the process. We haven't completed it, but we didn't have all of our sinks that were hands-free, so we've been converting those. Where we had sinks that weren't 6 feet, we closed that sink. So like right there across where our restroom is in the office area where I work, you have, it's got 3 sinks. The middle one's got big tape over it. Can't use it. We bought all kinds of signs. Cafeterias are grab and go only, and there are no tables or chairs in the cafeteria. In break rooms, we have some really cool solutions, like where we have like a picnic table. We put a plastic divider, like a big X, if you will, that so everybody can sit one per side, and they're behind a screen. Super creative ideas by our team members on how to do this, and that, like, again, things you never ever even considered.
Okay. And Herman Miller, anything to add to what Rich has offered?
I would just reiterate the same thing. Very similar situation where in cafeterias, we would take tables away. We'd still have chairs and places for people to sit, but we would take 2 or 3 of the chairs away from a particular table just to reduce the density of people sitting in that area and making sure that they were spaced out. I would say in a couple of our cafeterias, we've tried to put in one-way traffic through the cafeteria to try and keep a queue going so that you can maintain social distancing. Good and bad in those kind of experiments, but it really has been different in different environments. In bathrooms here, we haven't been able to really take out every other sink. A lot of ours are only 1 or 2 sinks to begin with. And even in the urinals, we've been able to put in larger dividers, higher and wider, to prevent any spread of the virus while people are in there. So yeah, some different solutions, but all in the same vein as what Rich was talking about.
Anything that has a handle or a touch activation, whether it's ice dispenser, water bottle filler, door, going something that's foot pedal based, is something that we're starting to spread here as well.
Yeah,
Right.
we had to teach people how to come through the turnstiles without touching them. So we actually made a video of how to enter a turnstile without using your hands.
All the new things we have to learn how to do. It is amazing. We are at 3:01 here, so just a minute over time. I'd like to thank again everybody who joined, as well as Rich, Steve, Scott, and Chris from GE Appliances and Herman Miller. So thankful that you were able to spend the last hour sharing your know-how with this group. We will make the recording available so that if you missed part of this, you'll be able to see all of it. And before we wrap up, I'll do a quick plug for the Lean Enterprise Institute. Like GE and Herman Miller, LEI has had to think on its feet this past few months. Unfortunately, we weren't able to hold our events in California and Michigan that we had planned. So instead, we will be doing a 10-week learning experience, of course, virtually, beginning this fall in September. And actually, GE Appliances and Herman Miller are 2 of the companies that will be featured over the course of those 10 weeks. You can expect 20+ videos, as well as 20+ speakers with some homework to do. We expect people to do things, not just watch the content and engage with it, but actually do things. Please check it out at lean.org/summit2020. So there, a quick commercial for LEI. So thank you again, everybody, for joining, and yeah, please stay safe, and yeah, best keep learning how to do all these unnatural things as naturally as possible. Thanks, everybody.
All right, thank you.
Farewell.
Thank you.
Here, everyone.